Are you looking to build influence? Or maybe to drive more traffic? But bottom line, you want to change the game. You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Business Building Book Club. We're going to give you the tools you need to succeed, both online and in person. Brought to you by Coach Molly and Three Pines Leadership. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Business Building Book Club. I'm your host, Coach Molly from visibilityhacking.com, and as per usual, so glad you guys are here. This episode, we're chatting with one of my favorite funnel builders and storytellers. Oh, yeah, from all the way across the pond in the UK, Rachel Boardman. But before we get into any of that, my friends, I have to remind you to find me on all of your favorite social platforms. I'm Coach Molly with an E on Clubhouse and Twitter. I'm Three Pines Leadership almost everywhere else. Come hang out. Come tell me your stories. Let's get to know each other. Let's get visible. All right, let's dive into today's conversation. So Rachel, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I am doing awesome. Thank you very much. I've got blue sky. It's not raining. What more do I want? I'm chatting with you.
And what's really cool is that Rachel and I have been chatting for the past hour and a bit because I'm on her summit. So how can people get in touch with that summit? Because I think when it comes to storytelling, they will definitely want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so the summit, it goes live on February 18th. I don't know when this is coming out. You haven't told me that, so hopefully it'll be out by then. Yeah, so it goes live February 18th, and you should be able to find it over at storiesthatconvert.co.uk/summit. Easy as that, and we can find it that. If otherwise, you can go follow me on Instagram or whatever, and Facebook, and the links will be on there as well. So yeah, it comes because it's not just me, it's not just Molly. There's a whole bunch of other rock star storytellers that they're going to be uncovering the secrets of how you can tell awesome stories.
Oh, and that leads us perfectly into what we're talking about today. So last episode, we read the chapter in Expert Secrets. Well, let me pull it up because I can never remember the full title. Expert Secrets, the Underground Playbook for Converting Your Online Visitors into Lifelong Customers. And I love that your summit is Stories That Convert. So in this chapter, we talked about the kinds of stories that you need to be telling in order to lay that foundation for your epiphany bridge. And what do you have to say about stories? And what's your greatest insight when it comes to stories and our businesses?
Well, I feel like stories are that thing that we all know about. We've all known stories since the day we were born, pretty much. Our parents tell us bedtime stories, and we go to school and they tell you, we read fairy tales and we watch films and TV shows are full of stories. They're like literally everywhere in the world, and we don't always notice them. And sometimes it's about being able to notice the stories that are happening, the ones that we connect with. Because if we're connected with the story, something there that we can connect, that resonates with us, that evokes that emotion in us, and noticing that is a great, because if we notice in ourselves and we know what works and when we put our own stories out there, that's going to work for whatever you want the person, your audience listening, whether it's to buy your thing, whether it's to go and watch a YouTube video or go and turn up to a live event, like whatever that thing is.
So at your summit, you ask one very particular question, and that's about the most impactful story that changed your business. So for you, what is that most impactful story?
I knew you were going to ask me this. Well, I actually have a session myself where I do tell this on the summit, because I was like, well, if it's not fair me asking everybody else and then not saying my own thing. But yeah, I'll go briefly into it. I've got a lot more detail into it on the summit. But basically, for me, it was I'd kind of uncovered the how you can use stories in business. Like, I read the first edition of Expert Secrets, and come across Russell's Epiphany Bridge script, and I was like, oh my god, this makes things so much easier. And I decided like I wanted to test it out, and I put up this post because at the time I was I had this my podcast about helping athletes and who turn into entrepreneurs, start their own business, and the transitions and the struggles that happen in that process. So I decided that I was going to put myself out there, and I found this photo that had been taken like it's just me in a swim hat and a costume, and I'm there stood on the side of the pool getting dressed, and it was at Welsh Nationals. Like, I'm not Welsh, but I didn't qualify to go to English Nationals that year, mainly because I had pneumonia twice. So I hadn't really performed well, but as an English swimmer, I could go and compete at Welsh Nationals and win like a honorary medal. If I did, like, I wouldn't win, like if I was the best swimmer, they wouldn't crown me Welsh champion, because that doesn't work like that. So I would so I went, there's a small team of us went there, and there's this photo, and this it was about a month after I'd been diagnosed the second time. Like and I just look ill. And I told this story about how I went to Welsh Nationals and I swam, and like I think I was like 3 seconds off my best time in the end, which is ridiculous considering I'd maybe spent about 4 hours in the water like in the month leading up to it. And how I went and I swam, and I think I got on the podium and I did really well, and it was like I shouldn't have been there. I told this story how I was really ill and I just shouldn't have been there, but there was nobody there to tell me that I shouldn't be there. I didn't have, like, my coach had never been in that situation before, so how was he didn't really understand that how ill I'd been, because even though I had been like really ill, like almost as ill as some of the COVID patients right now. Like I'd had a really bad temperature. I couldn't walk up the stairs without having to have a nap and being out of breath. I was sleeping 16 hours a day. It was, and I don't remember most of that. Most of this I know because my mum told me afterwards, because when you're in that kind of illness, you just you want to survive, right? So I told this story on this. It was on an Instagram post. If you go on my Instagram, you scroll down, you'll see it. So you'll see it somewhere. I said, and now I know this, and I use the lessons. I think I said that it was about knowing my body and about having to rest, and how rest is such an important thing. And it was the first time that I really got any comments or likes, and these are, not metrics that we should be like wanting to know about, but it's the first time I felt like people took notice of what I was saying. And it was like, oh, okay. So me putting myself out there, me showing me some of my vulnerabilities and telling this story is what's connecting with these people. Maybe this does have some merit, and I got while at that point, I didn't really have anything to sell apart from come and listen to my podcast. It was that turning point to go, okay, I can actually use story. I am all right telling stories, and that this actually works. And from that point, I started incorporating it into everything as I figured out what that thing was going to be for me in business and those kind of things.
Oh, that's cool. And that's an interesting story too. I've heard this story before, but it inspires me to dig deeper. So you were in this state of crisis. So your story that you're telling yourself is all about survival. I need to survive. But your mom was experiencing that same situation from her perspective, and she was able to see something completely different than what you were seeing. I think that's really powerful, because in that moment, if you were to tell a story, it wouldn't really be that impactful. But when you have the ability to step back and gather that more perspective down the road, you're able to say, whoa, I see what my mom was seeing, the outside perspective. I see that trajectory,
but I also know what my brain was going through. And this is what I did in that moment to survive. So those of you listening at home, if you're thinking about crafting stories and epiphany bridges for your business and for your movement, it's not always just about having that framework type perspective to present, but it's also not being just in that moment in that crisis mode. And when you're writing stories for your business, it's not always about finding those moments of crisis, but it's finding those moments of change and how you go from survival mode to, hey, now I can do this. Hey, I was actually able to accomplish so much, even though I was so frail in that moment. And that's really powerful. Because when we talk to athletes, a lot of the time my brain goes to, well, what happens when you're done with your sport? What happens when that narrative changes? But it's in those micro moments that there's so much power as well. That's really neat. So I have to ask you more about being an athlete, because there's a lot of stories that you have to tell yourself. So we talk about chains of false belief in this chapter, and this idea that we have these stories that we're telling ourselves, or stories that were told to us that define us and keep us in a box, that keep us chained. Those are our chains of false belief. So as an athlete, I bet there's moments where you walk up and you go, I shouldn't be here. Like you had pneumonia, saying, I'm in such a frail state, I shouldn't be here. Or I just lost that last competition, so I don't deserve to be here. But you have to change that mindset instantly in order to actually achieve something. So what kind of story did you tell yourself in order to change that?
So I think sometimes it wasn't always the story that I told myself. Sometimes it was a story that like my coach told myself, or that like someone else would say, because I'm one of these people who will get in their head and will overthink things, and like I find it hard to express myself apart. Like that's why writing's a great thing for me, because it's easier to write things down than sometimes it is to get it out of my mouth. And so I'll let things go over and over and over and over in my head. And there was, I'll tell you, there was this one time it was the Northwest Regional Championships, and I got through to the final, but it was also the last time, like I was streaks ahead of the other girls I was, if I didn't win, it was because I did something ridiculous during that. Like it was one of those races, but it wasn't that race wasn't about winning for me. It was about it was that last chance that I'd have to qualify for the national championships in a few months' time. And like I'd done it the year before, and I think I'd done it like 2 years previously, and it was like, I knew that I could get there, and it was like, I think I had to knock like a couple of seconds off my best time to get there, and I was doing the things in training, so it was kind of there. But we did the heats in the morning, and then the finals were in the afternoon, and my mum consciously took me out at the break, we went to Subway for lunch around the corner, and she kind of sat me down and went, you're overthinking things, Rachel. You need to just like get out your head, calm down, and just like not think about it and just do it. And you need to and she basically took me out of the area, and we went for a walk, and we just like talked about everything else apart from swimming, and it did the trick. Because I got back in, and I, remembered that, yeah, it doesn't matter if I don't make the time. It's about having fun. This is something that I love to do. And I got in and I swam, and, I made nationals. And, I didn't just to knock those 2 seconds off. I knocked 3 off, I think, in the end. And it was just like, just because I was relaxed. And I know like every athlete has a different way of performing. Some people have to be like really upbeat and aggressive and whereas I'm more of a chilled out, need to be like just relaxed and calm, and like otherwise I don't perform well. And that was kind of the first real moment that I understood that about the way that I compete. And from then on, like every time I went up to competition, I'd remember what my mum had told me, what had worked, and I put that into practice, and my consistency in performance was like went through the roof, Whereas in the past it had been like, oh, well, this is a little tiny competition, it doesn't really matter, swim really well. This is quite big, it's quite important, I've only got like this and this chance to make this qualifying time. All right, okay, don't swim so well, kind of thing. So yeah.
So it's important to make sure that we keep track of the stories we tell ourselves, but it's also important, as this chapter introduces to us, it's important to dig deep and understand the root of those stories. So we talk about the chains of false belief and these stupid stories that we tell ourselves and that our customers are telling ourselves. And the chapter invites us to dig deeper and figure out, what is the story that our people are telling themselves that keeps them chained to that old belief? And then it asks us to dig even deeper and figure out, what is the experience that that person went through in order to start believing that story in themselves? And then with that information, we're able to figure out where our people are and draw that bridge, create that story that's going to change that belief for them. So how do you apply that in your business, or how do you see other people applying that in their businesses?
So I think you see a lot of people like looking, and it's a case of going out there, asking the questions to your audience, saying, all right, well, what are you struggling with? Or writing a story with perhaps you've got an idea of something that they're struggling with. So I write a story like, this happened to me, and now I overcame it, and now I'm doing this. And then you look at the comments that come out, or the messages that you get back, and you go, oh, okay, that is something that's happening there. And maybe you decide that you're going to go and have a deeper conversation with them to find out more. And why do they feel like that? What's exactly going on? And I think this it's a for me, it's a problem in the whole world right now, is that there's not enough people. Like, everybody's got an opinion, and that is completely fine. Everyone is entitled to an opinion, but we need to listen to what's going on in other people's heads, because you might learn something, and there's not enough of us listening to what other people are saying. If you don't listen and you don't ask the questions, you're not going to understand what exactly going on. And while a lot of people, like, I know there's people say like your dream customer is often like you, but a little while ago. So yeah, sure, you probably got an idea of what's going on, but unless you're like Coach Molly over here, who consciously goes and records every like little thing that happens in her life, so she knows exactly what happened on every single day, then how do you expect to be able to remember exactly? You might be able to say, oh, well, this happened, but you might not be able to say, oh, well, I felt like this. I then, this is what I did. This is how it felt. This is what I said. These are exact words that I said, unless you record that. Whereas your audience are in that situation right now. So you can go and ask them and they'll tell you. It might it might not be as easy as that, but it is as simple.
Yeah, like we get so used to telling stories about celebrating things, especially as entrepreneurs. We're looking at great metrics, and people are posting their Stripe accounts and how much money they've made, or what their certain ad metrics are, or whatever, which is awesome, which is, yes, something to celebrate. But when we're telling stories, we forget to look at those painful parts, to look at where we used to be vulnerable and share that self-doubt we had. Because the magic and the power of that is that if you share that vulnerability, that doubt you had, or that doubt you currently have, that insecurity you have, you're actually going to connect deeper and better with other people, with your audience, with your dream customers, with your community, because they're able to be on that same level with you for that brief moment. While you're still a few steps ahead of them, they go, wait, I see myself in that story. I see myself in that vulnerability. And if we don't actively record those difficult moments, then we're going to forget about them. Our brains do that on purpose. So I like to think about Rachel Peterson. I think she does an amazing job at sharing those vulnerabilities in a way that is celebratory. She's on this amazing fitness journey right now, and she shares those before pictures, and she talks about the struggles. She talks about her insecurities, but as her progress, I get more and more excited to see that progress, to cheer her on as she goes, because I feel connected to where she started. And I want to go on that journey with her. I want to deepen my connection to her and her tribe. And it's all through telling stories. How powerful is that? That's so cool.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And to be honest, I don't know if it's because I'm British, but I actually think I find it more difficult to tell the stories about success. Yeah, like again, I'm pretty sure it's more to do with a story that I've been telling myself for like the longest time, until like I realized, and it was that I didn't deserve success. And to celebrate success is showing off. It's, you know, saying that you're better than everybody else, and you know, being that egotistical kind of person, and that all, for me, that all stemmed back to when I was in primary school, so like 7 or 8. And I used to, at break time, I would go and play football or soccer, as you guys would call it, in the playground, and it was obviously mostly with the boys. And like I love playing sport, and like I enjoy playing football, until like this girl who's basically started calling me out and being quite nasty and saying like I was showing off. Why am I playing football with the boys? And so I stopped playing football for a little while, until like my mum was like, what the hell's going on? Kind of thing. And I didn't realize until recently that had ingrained this story in my head that was like, you don't deserve success. And that's why when I, did my exams, I didn't really celebrate it. When I qualified for nationals, I was like, yeah, all right, that's cool. Yeah. When I swam for my county, it was like, all right, cool. When I got my PhD, it was like, yeah, all right, fair enough. It's, that's pretty good. I just kind of underplayed all these like amazing things because of this one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like especially for people who are high achievers, it's like we're told that there's a certain level of success that we can celebrate. Like the first time you do something, that's cool, but then when you continue to progress, people get jealous, and they don't want to see you succeed. They don't want to hear your stories of success. But we have to remember that that is a limited section of the world. There are people who are, I like to think about the success I've had in my life, business, personal, school, all that kind of stuff. I see that I was inspired to reach for those goals because of the people who came before me. And so I always think every time I step to my stage, to my community, I am standing on the shoulders of giants, and it is my job to become that giant, to have strong shoulders for the next generation to stand on. And it's those people who are willing to take that risk and to stand on those shoulders. Those are my people. And I need to remember that I am speaking to them. I am speaking through and beyond and past all of those people who don't want to hear my success stories. And I'm speaking clearly and directly to those people who need to hear me, even if it's just one person in the middle of nowhere. But I want to create that connection. It's relationship building, and it starts with the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And it took me a while to figure that out, but like once I did, it set the ball rolling. And obviously every now and again it's like, should I post this? Should I tell this story? And then it's like, no, Rachel, do it. If it helps one person, then that you've made the difference there.
Exactly. Oh, I love it. All right, so before we go, any last words on stories? Any particular story that really changed the game for you?
I don't know if there's any particular story. I think it's there's a collection, you know, that you go from one to the other to the other. And I think the first time that I read the Russell's Epiphany Bridge script was a huge moment, because I understood like why the things that I was seeing in adverts or whatever, why they were working. Like I look at an advert and go, oh, well, that advert's telling me like this. And while it kind of was, I didn't really see that there was a story behind it. It's made me watch films and TV programs in a different way, which can be great, but sometimes it can be annoying because you guess what's going to happen.
Guilty.
Yeah, but it also it helped me reflect and look back at all the different ways that I told stories or that they've been involved in my life. For example, like when I was writing my thesis for my PhD, like one of my supervisors always used to like refer to it as my science story, and I was like, "What the hell are you on about? This isn't a story. It's like a scientific piece of writing." Like, and I was like, but now I understand that actually it is a story and that I can see the elements of a story in there. So I think for me it was that first time understanding that there are frameworks for storytelling out there, and kind of that peeking behind the curtain to see what everybody else knows and going, okay, now I get it.
And for those of you who are super creative people and you're feeling like, oh, I don't want to touch a framework because it's going to dim my creativity. It's not, I promise you. It's like putting up guardrails to make sure that you're staying on track and you're actually able to write a story that converts in the end. How you flesh that out is all up to you. It's like a coloring book. The lines are there to help you keep the character, but you get to pick the colors. You get to decide if you're going to color outside of those lines too. You can decide if you want to cut the whole shape out and stick it somewhere completely different, but it's the framework that's going to help create a recognizable path that's actually going to create that conversion. It's not just telling stories for the sake of telling stories. It's telling stories that are going to move our people from one state of mind to another, from one platform to another, from cold leads to warm leads, from people who are just curiously passing by to raving fans. It's following a framework. That's the secret to getting that to happen for your people.
Yeah, and just to kind of quote Captain Jack Sparrow, they're more like guidelines anyway.
I love it. I love it. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute blast. How can people get in touch with you? We've already talked about your summit, but how else can they find you?
Yeah, well, I am on Instagram. My tagline is no
Your
handle.
handle.
That's the right word. Yeah, it's Rach Boardman, so RACHBOARDMAN. And you can find me on Facebook. You can either, I think it's Rachel.Boardman13, or just search Rachel Boardman Manchester. And you should be able to find me.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much for joining me. And you guys listening at home, thank you again. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platforms, I can never say that. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platforms, consider giving us a 5-star rating, rate us, download us, share us with your friends. And if you're watching in video format on the Three Pines Leadership YouTube page, leave a comment, leave a like, say hi, subscribe, hear more. I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you in our next episode where we dive back into Russell Brunson's book. Make sure you get your copy. Links are down below. It's absolutely free. Just cover the cost of shipping. I'll see you again later, my friends. I love you, and be excellent to each other.